Tommy, when you were 15 when you started working in the fish market, wasn't it 15 years old?
Yeah, 15 years old.
What uh I'm curious, did you always have the hard work ethic or did it get beaten into you by my grandfather or like how did that how did that happen?
It, I was stupid. That's what it bounced out to really being. Because your grandfather offered me and your dad both. You guys want to go to college? He says, I make enough money I can send both you to college. Any college you want to go to.
Wow.
And we both looked at it. He said, you're going to tell me right now, it's yes or no. You're going to work in a fish market or you're going to go to college. And then we said, we'll work in the fish market. So if I had to do it all over again, I would go to college. Not because I didn't want to work in the fish market. I might go back. I probably would have went right back to the fish market, but I would have a lot more knowledge in my head of about some of the things to do and not do. So it's so that's the only regret
I do.
Mike, I
know.
think Tommy's being modest. I think
No,
he was driven. He worked harder than anybody. He
well,
sacrificed
yeah, I
uh,
did work hard, but
long hours, no vacations, and there were tough days where those guys, he and your dad wondered about how they're going to make payroll. So he's being modest in terms of what he contributed. But one other life lesson that I think I saw, which was a difference, which is generational for people who come out of working on the docks or working on boats and that sort of thing. Uh, yeah, it's true. I became the president of that company in the last 10 years that I worked there. So it was not instant gratification. But I think the difference that I saw in generations that came behind me, there were a lot of people that thought, when I would ask them, what are your ambitions? I was always interested in what horizons people were looking at. Well, they said, we'd like to have your job. And I said, that's great. I hope you get that and I hope you attain that. But the problem is that they wanted it later that afternoon. And they didn't realize that sometimes overnight successes take 10 or 20 years.
yeah,
Right.
yes, this doesn't flop into your hands. Yeah,
Right.
true.
I mean, what we've been going through for the last 3 years now, right? It's so similar right, in a lot of ways to what you, Tommy, and my dad and grandfather had to deal with, 30 or 40 years ago when you had to build San Pedro fish. Like what? Tell us a little bit about that. So you have to leave Norm's Landing, you're in a parking lot, then you have to reopen San Pedro fish. What was that like? Or you had to open it for the first time. It didn't exist before.
That was that was crazy, crazy, because when we first went in, yeah, we knew the fish business, and most people took fish to go home and eat. So after about 3 months, the first month we didn't even open the fast food because we were scared we were going to mess everything all up. And then finally we opened it, and that was running maybe a month later. Then we opened up the dining room part of it, and then it took a little while, but that also went pretty good, so
We were there every Friday.
then everything went good, and then we started with like a small deck, and then we just kept adding and adding and adding, put the upstairs in, so there was a lot more to it. And when we were doing that, we had a lot of friends that helped us and knew what to do and stuff. So it was I was a lucky person.
Yeah.
I happened to be the guy that I knew all these people. I knew the pile driver and he taught us how to lay the planks for the decks. And if you were half an inch off as you're putting them down, because he'd have to go to work at a job. He was doing us a favor. He'd come back that night, and if you were off, where'd you start? Back here, you go measure that. If that would take all these out, take them out. Take them out. Yeah, take them out. And take all the boards back out. He says, I told you guys to put these wedges in there. And the wedges got to go right there. So there's a lesson that I learned from the guy. And then when we finished, because when you lay a decking out, you start from the outside.
Those are railroad ties, right? Those aren't light little pieces of wood.
No. They were 4 by 12 by 12. Oh, wow. So 4 inches thick, full 4 inches thick, by 12 feet across, 12 inches across, 12 feet long.
Wow.
Those things were heavy. Let me tell you.
It's not light.
Yeah. No shit. But anyways, we got it done with his help. So there was a lot of guys. You know, there's even when we were building the upstairs, the health department guy, he was pretty neat. You know, he come down and he says, "What are you guys doing?" I says, "Well, we're putting the thing upstairs." He says, "Okay, you pretend like I wasn't here, right? The next time I come in here, I want to see plastic all around all this stuff here. What you do on the weekend, I won't be here, so it's your choice there. But Monday morning, you better have plastic on this stuff in case I have to walk in." So, I mean, there was things like that, you know, that, and people told me he was the toughest health inspector of all the inspectors.
Yeah.
You know?
What?
He liked us for some reason. I don't know why.
You had a story you shared not too long ago about, was it the Army Corps of Engineers for the permits? You couldn't get all the permits done, and this guy came down and you didn't know who he was, and he had everybody meet down on site at like 8 o'clock in the morning. What was that story?
Oh no, that was the originals. The original story is he was Army Corps of Engineer guy, the head man. His name was Jim Hall. Never forget that guy's name. Okay. So he come. I had never been to LA in my life hardly, you know. So I had to go to LA something like 20 times. So to a meeting at his place, and every time I went, federal fish and wildlife, fish and game, guys from Sacramento, here, there, everything. We're all there. And they'd go over all this shit. And the man never said a word to me. All he said was after about maybe a year, maybe less, and he put a stack of papers on the desk, and they were probably at least 12 inches tall. And he says, "You know what, you guys? We're all going to go meet at San Pedro Fish on Monday morning, 8 o'clock. He said, "It's mandatory." He said, "The mandatory thing is if you don't show up, it's a yes. He could build a fish market. Otherwise, you show up at 8 o'clock. They all showed up. He has that same thing, the same package in his hand. He gets it, and he drops it in the dirt. And he says, "Okay, everybody, nobody leaves this place until this guy gets a yes or a no. But first, I'm going to tell you a story." He says, "When I was a kid," and I get choked up every time I say this, "when I was a young man, my father would take me down here to go fishing and crabbing. And he would, my father went to this guy," which he pointed at me, and said, "Hey, would like to buy some bait." And he said, "Yeah, go out there, there's some barrels, help yourself." So he picked what he wanted, come back in. He says, "No, I got to pay you for the bait." And you turn around. He says, "Are you taking that kid fishing?" He says, "Yeah, of course." He says, "There's no charge. You come back anytime you want." He said, "That kid was me." Head guy for Army Corps of Engineers. They all need him.
Wow.
He says, "There's the corner of the lot where the market was at." He goes, "You go over. You talk about it. Nobody's leaving until it's a yes or a no. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. They come back. Says, "What's up?" Yes.
Awesome.
I mean,
Great story.
but I never knew this from the beginning. He never said a word to me like he knew me or anything. And then he tells the story.
Incredible.
It's very, very hard to me. I start crying every time I say it.
We could have used that guy now.
That's a great story.
Yeah, who
Mike,
knows where he's at?
I don't know if
That's 50 years ago.
Oh yeah, that's a good shot, John.
can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Talk about
Oh
where did
yeah.
you see there's a seal tank there, and that little
Yeah.
sign says cocktails, shrimp and
Yeah.
crab cocktail. Well, that's
Yeah.
you talk about where did these guys start? It's that little hole in the wall right there. That was San Pedro Fish Market.
Arms Landing.
Yeah, North Landing.
Cocktails and corn on the cob.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an old picture, isn't that from 1965 or something? Got the date on it, I think.
1964.
Four.
Yeah, you guys were up and running.
Wow.
Yeah.
Such a contrast, right? We just October 1st, I think, we were able to finally open the new location that we've been working on for 2.5 years, and it's all technology based now to make it work because we have to rush through these things, and you're scanning with a QR code. It's not the old way of doing it, so the kitchen's getting inundated with 300 to 400 orders at a time.
Wow.
There's 1,600 seats, and they didn't figure out how to control the flow. No kitchen can handle 300 or 400 orders simultaneously. So
Yeah, that is amazing.
But it's such a Tommy, I'm curious. Like now, from the time going back to the original Vista Seafood, then Norm's Landing, then San Pedro Fish, to now, like what goes through your mind when you see all these changes and the growth and the just still managing to all the customers still coming down despite all that.
Yeah, well, it's a great to me that the business continues to do well. The only thing we're missing is the personal touch. That we're not reaching the customers. Yeah, they go in, they do the pad, they do that, they go pick up a beer. We're missing the interaction with the customers. How you doing? How was your shrimp? Did you get your shrimp fast enough? Tell us what's going on. That's the only thing we're missing, as far as I could see.
Yeah.
And
what I thought was kind of interesting is when we had the pandemic and we had to only let 6 people in at a time. That was one of the first times we actually got to talk to all the people and see like what. It was amazing how many had. I didn't know how this place worked, even though I've been here all these because no one stopped to tell me. They just follow the crowd in and end up wherever they ended up until they sat down.
Yeah.
And because it was so hard with 1 million people coming through a year to talk to people. He disappeared.
Oh, okay. He's not going to answer me. He ducked the question.
John? What do you think? Like being there from the beginning to see where things have gone over the decades. I don't know. What kind of runs through your mind? Do you have a different perspective, having gone and done other things and been in other businesses?
Well, there's a number of thoughts that go through my mind. One is the great immigrant story of people who came into San Pedro and so largely so many from on the Italian side, so many from Ischia, and on my dad's side, the people from Korchala. But to watch these immigrant families in terms of what can happen from generation to generation. So, for me, and I can talk about yours next, people who had started out working either on the docks or on fishing boats, and then creating a basis for the next generation to get an education and do different things. That story certainly goes through this fish market, because I see it with the Ungaros, your great grandparents that I talked to you about, from basically, subsistence living on 11th Street to the generational business now that you and the Amalfitanos have. That's what goes through my mind. And all of the progression of things that you see in corporate life, I've certainly seen happen through your business. And Tommy just talked about one that's very tough, and that is, as you change scale, how do you stay close to your customer? Yeah. How do you continue to have that same culture, friendly culture of your business and the things that you so much want to get to your customers? But that's, as I watch that progression, that's what goes through my mind. But then there's some emotional themes that run too. Friendships that have lasted 60 and 70 years, and for your dad, you can give me an emotional moment like Tommy, but I miss him so very much.
Yeah, all do.
I really do.
So I think Tommy's phone died. He's sending me a text. I don't know if it was the battery or the phone, but we can wrap up either way. Joe, is there anything else you want to add before we end this episode?
Maybe just a couple of comments, Mike. I think I've really enjoyed this. Reliving some of the paths through not only growing up in San Pedro, but San Pedro Fish Market, and your dad and Tommy, and reliving what a great story it's been. And I just thank you so much for asking me, and I was so happy to be able to contribute a couple of items from the past.
Oh, it's great to have you on. So, wrapping up the latest episode of Fish Factor, my guests, John Bacich and Tommy Amalfitano, mentors, family, uncle, founders, there from the beginning. Great stories shared today. Thank you guys.